97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco.
My first allegiance is what will be best for the Philadelphia Eagles and our fans for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by Dr. Lyle and Back. For everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to iloveLyleBack.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle and Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4. Mike and Broads, Andrew DiCecco is in the house today, and Andrew falls on a day where there's some interesting news surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles. Roger Goodell also spoke. We'll get Andrew's thoughts on the Super Bowl. This will be his final appearance before the big game, so we'll talk to him, get his thoughts on that and more. But first, let's bring Andrew in here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. And Andrew, another day as the world turns for the Philadelphia Eagles and their quarterback Carson Wentz. The NFL Network, Inside the Birds, also reporting that the Eagles have been fielding calls for disgruntled quarterback Carson Wentz. Adam Kaplan said today that he is hearing that people around the league think that the Colts make the most sense. Obviously, a lot of people have connected the Colts, but what say you when you hear that the Eagles are fielding calls for Wentz? Is the inevitable going to happen that Wentz will be traded, or is this due diligence?
Yeah, I think at this point, Mike, it's going to be more a matter of when this happens more so than if, because there's just too much smoke for this not to happen. I mean, even heard Daniel Jeremiah speak the other day. The way that Carson Wentz is perceived around the NFL, he's going to have a lot of interest. And I think that when you look at a 28-year-old quarterback, a lot of teams are going to be inclined to at least, call and see what the starting point is for the Eagles, because there's going to be a lot of teams that feel like we can fix this guy. Maybe it was the system. Maybe there are other variables contributing to his regression. Maybe we could offer. I mean, when you look at quarterbacks like in the past, like Carson Palmer and Sam Bradford that yielded first-round picks, you have to think that the starting point for Carson Wentz is going to be a first-round pick. And, there's some certainty there, knowing at least what he's capable of doing from teams, and there's less question when you're looking at, versus a rookie quarterback. So I do think that they're smart to field calls. I think eventually he's going to have to get moved. I mean, I put it this way. There's no way that I foresee Carson and Jalen Hurts being able to kind of coexist and be on the same roster in training camp. There's not going to be a training camp battle I can't foresee between the two quarterbacks. There's no way that Carson Wentz would be down for that. That's kind of just the way I see it.
Over the last 4 or 5 weeks or even longer, we've been discussing, hey, has Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie maybe releasing some information out to the public so a story will be generated? Do you think it's possible that maybe these phone calls that we're all hearing about, maybe it's not as strong as it really is, but maybe it's Lurie and Howie kind of throwing it out there to see what happens?
I do think that there's some merit to Rappaport and obviously all the different reports that you saw that they're fielding calls. And one of the interesting things in Mike Garafolo's article was that even with Doug Peterson gone, Carson Wentz still had concerns, which to me leads to Howie Roseman and ownership. And that's kind of how and those aren't going away, right? So I kind of see him saying, look, yeah, you got rid of Doug Peterson and we got a new coach in here, but that's not good enough. There's still other things that make me uneasy about returning back to Philadelphia. I may want to start somewhere else. So I think that the calls are legitimate, and I think that there's going to be more than a handful of teams that are at least inquiring about getting his services. So I guess we're going to kind of have to see how it plays out.
Now, your opinion on this, Andrew. Do you think the Eagles are fielding calls or making calls?
Well, I think that they're fielding calls, right?
So Howie's not picking up the Rolodex and calling around the league and saying, "Hey, you have any interest in Wentz?" But he definitely has his ringer on.
Yeah, he's definitely got his ringer on, Mike. And look, the Eagles did not want it to get to this point. They made it very clear that they didn't want to move on from. They don't want to move on from Carson Wentz. But their hand may be getting forced a little bit here based on, you can't have a franchise quarterback play in a city that he doesn't want to be. That's not good for the franchise, and that's not good for the player. So I think they kind of reached a crossroads here where, we didn't want to get to this, but and other teams around the league, they know that. So they're going to make these phone calls and at least start these conversations and kind of initiate the dialogue as far as, what's the starting point? What do you guys, what's it going to take for us to pry this guy away? Because obviously the marriage here is just not working out.
Well, let's say they are just taking calls and nothing ends up happening. How now do you bring back Carson Wentz and he goes back into this locker room, goes to the NovaCare complex every day, knowing that, well, they were taking phone calls about you? And I know the easy answer is you're a professional. Go out there and play. But we're talking about a scenario now that isn't really that doesn't fly right now. This is a mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a mess, Hunter. And what may happen is the Eagles may end up having to get desperate and have to take the best offer, which may not be what most quarterbacks yield on the open market. It might be less than a first-round pick because there's no way that it's going to work out given all the stories that have come out. Carson's silent. There's going to be possibly a divided locker room. Imagine what the locker room thinks when the season ends with Jalen Hurts as the quarterback, but you automatically turn the reins over to Carson Wentz. That's going to cause a little bit of discrepancy there. It's just not a healthy situation for either party right now. And, maybe Carson Wentz can have that resurgence to his career. I just don't know that it can happen in Philadelphia, given everything that's sort of transpired. Just a toxic atmosphere there, and I think it'd be best for both parties kind of just to part ways.
Yeah, now, one thing that we've kind of wondered is what is the line of demarcation for a trade? Like, in your mind, what would be the least you would be like? What do you need to get back in return? They got 2 first-round picks for Matthew Stafford. So where's your level of what the Eagles would have to get back for you to consider moving him?
Well, I think equal, or a first and a second-round pick. Look, we're talking about, yes, he's had an injury history, but we're talking about a quarterback who 3 years ago was in the running for a league MVP. So you don't just want to toss somebody like that aside without getting proper compensation. But what may happen is teams are going to know that the Eagles are kind of under the gun here, and that they're kind of held hostage, and they know that obviously the contract situation. And I would say a first and a second round pick. I don't know that teams are going to want to give 2 firsts for Carson, knowing everything that's kind of festered and all the kind of the locker room drama and all that stuff. There's going to be some teams that are going to be a little bit hesitant and not willing to kind of give that kind of capital to acquire somebody who could end up being problematic for their franchise. But there's going to be enough intrigue there to say, hey, you know what? Here's a 28-year-old quarterback. We can kind of get him on the right path, and if it works out, we're going to be right in the playoffs and push for a championship.
I'm with you where I don't think it works here no matter what. So if the best offer on the table is a second-round pick, what do you say?
Man, the reason why I say they have to pull the trigger is because, like you said, Hunter, I just can't envision Carson getting in front of the podium.
What if it was a third?
In training camp, that's speaking. If it was a third, I don't think that the Eagles would be willing to do that. But I don't think the teams would be willing to. I think that they would offer a second-round pick. I don't think that they're going to lowball the Eagles so much as to offer a third-round pick. But I just have such a hard time envisioning Carson Wentz in front of the podium in training camp like nothing happened. You have to eventually address it. You can't just move on. He hasn't addressed the new coaching hire. He hasn't spoken since the Green Bay Packers game, really. It's just too much stuff is kind of piled on. Where you just walk in the locker room like, hey, guys, I'm ready to, let's get after it. I just don't know that it's going to work that way. There's just too much drama and too much and a potentially divided locker room. I don't know that Nick Sirianni really needs to deal with that right now as a first-year head coach.
Right, and the one thing is, you mentioned he hasn't talked at all, and now Hurts has come out and he's talked, and Mills has come out and he said stuff. And the fact that Wentz doesn't come out is the message, hey, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to be here, or I don't want to say anything because I got nothing to say. In other words, you guys can read it yourself. I don't need to go out there and stir more controversy. But the fact that Hurts has now come out and at least mentioned, hey, I know it's a business, I'm willing to fight for it. It kind of almost gives him the lead in the leadership category.
Yeah, I think Jalen's getting proper guidance. I mean, that's what you want from a franchise quarterback. You want accountability. You want someone that's going to accept the challenge, be willing to fight for it, not expect to be handed something, that there's not an air of entitlement there. That's what you want to hear. And Jalen has those leadership qualities. There was never a question about that. Well, in Carson's case, you gotta be careful about speculating. That's what I caution a lot of people, because you don't want to just draw your own conclusions. But I mean, in this particular situation, having someone that's not talked, that hasn't spoken in months, and these are serious issues that have been kind of printed, and you haven't addressed it. I mean, you even have to do a press conference. How about a post out there, just kind of addressing it and clearing the air. There hasn't been anything like that. So unfortunately, all we're left to do is to kind of assume, I don't think this guy really wants to be here. Talking's not really going to get him anywhere one way or the other. And, I think his camp is going to kind of handle everything moving forward.
All right, let me ask you this. You guys are both under the assumption that the Eagles need to get back something for him. Do any of you guys think the Eagles have to give up something with him to get rid of him, similar to what L.A. did with Goff?
Yeah, I mean, that's always going to be on the table as well because of the contract, right? I mean, I think you're going to have to. These are what fielding calls are all about. The early stages of that, figuring out what teams think. Maybe they don't have to, but maybe there's going to be a certain team that says, we're willing to take them, but we want this from you in return. So I think that they have to explore all options because, like I said, I think it's just not working out here in Philadelphia, and they need to figure out a way to get this guy off the roster.
Yeah, personally, I don't think that you'd have to give up something like the Rams did to get rid of Carson Wentz like they did with Goff. But, hey, you never know with this crazy business.
Like you don't think a team would call and say, we'll take Wentz, but we want a future first. We want something
because
in
there'll
return.
be a team that would offer that third, that hypothetically that third I just mentioned to him, or maybe something like that. I feel there would be a team that said, hey, if it's only going to cost us the third, wouldn't the Eagles rather take that third than give up first-round picks to trade Wentz?
Yeah, well, that would be the only tipping point. If it gets to that point, Hunter, where they're kind of offering, a third-round pick or something like that, then that part would be kind of moot. But it's going to be really interesting to see because the Eagles have a real serious dilemma here, and this is really the last thing that Nick Sirianni really needs to be dealing with. But it's the topic of conversation here in Philadelphia, and it's not going away. So, I mean, they're going to have to get creative here and really entertain any and every call that they get about this guy because, like I said, it's just not a healthy relationship right now.
I know we've thrown this around before, but since the trade talk's getting more realistic, pick 6. Do you rock with Jalen Hurts, or are you thinking, hey, maybe we should look into a quarterback?
Well, look, they're assuming, obviously Lawrence is going 1. Justin Fields would be the only quarterback that I would go for at 6 if he happens to be there. But the Eagles they're not really built or equipped right now to win anything right now. This is kind of Sirianni's going to feel his way. He's going to build the roster the way that he envisions building it. It's going to be probably a 2 or 3 year process before they're really close to competing for anything, I would assume. But given the cap situation, given they're going to have to get younger in certain areas, it's going to be a retooling. So to speak. So I think that you go with Jalen Hurts for this year. You see what you have there. Give him. I think his guy's going to look markedly different with a full off season and new coaching. Brian Johnson being the quarterback coach, he has a relationship with Jalen Hurts. I think that you're going to see a different Jalen Hurts from what you saw last season. He was kind of thrown into the fire. But 4 games, I don't think is an accurate sample size of what he can actually be as a pro. I think that he has room to grow, and he deserves a year to be able to do that.
You know the draft really well. So what about a quarterback at number 6? Was that something that would interest you if they were to move Wentz, or would you advocate sticking with Hurts?
I would stick with Hurts, and I would address other areas of the roster that really need. Look, they need receiver help. They need offensive line help. They could always use defensive line. There's even up and down the board. They just need to get younger. And I think when you do that, I think you go with Jalen Hurts, but you surround him with weapons where it's in an atmosphere where he's set up to succeed. Give him a Kyle Pitts. Give him a bona fide wide receiver to pair with Rager.
There you go, giving them a tight end at number 6. Check.
Yeah, I would probably you could probably afford to trade down and go down a few spots and still get Kyle Pitts. But I think the point is you really need to you have a young quarterback. Give him a full offseason, give him a full year in that system, but give him weapons and give him the proper tools that he needs to be successful. Don't make the same mistake that you made with Wentz, because obviously there's so many things that kind of compiled and he just doesn't want to be here. But so they can't make that same mistake, and you have to set this guy up for success. Yeah. And I think that starts with adding a skill player in the early with their first-round pick.
What a mess.
Yeah, something we haven't really hit on yet is the Howie Roseman part of this. Now, Donovan McNabb was on CBS Sports, and he was asked about if they should move on from Carson Wentz, and he said yes, but the problem is Howie is so tied to him that his job could be on the line. Like, this guy moved all the way up to go get Carson Wentz, and now it's getting to this level of ugliness. Do you think that there's anything
the problem,
to that?
Though. I don't look at it and say
as a failure.
It was a failure.
I agree with you.
They made the move up. They drafted a guy. He got him to a Super Bowl. They went to the playoffs twice. I don't say, no offense to Ryan Leaf, who we just had on, and he's not here to defend himself, but he wasn't a busteroni like Leaf was. I mean, this guy was, Leaf,
no, I'm with you.
He owns it. I mean, he accepts the fact that he was a bust. Wentz wasn't a colossal bust. He just has taken a turn.
No, I agree with you completely. It's just an interesting perspective of now it's like, okay,
that is,
Doug and Howie were tied together, and now you have Howie and Wentz tied together, and it evaporated very quickly.
Yeah, Howie is tied to Carson, and like you guys outlined, it's not a failure. The Eagles don't win Super Bowl 52 without Carson Wentz and having that performance that he had. Unfortunately, obviously the ACL injury wiped out his opportunity of actually playing in the title game, but they don't get there without him. So I don't know that you can call that a failure. And he, to the point that he's tied to Howie's tied to Carson. Yeah, he is, and it's kind of indirectly Howie's fault that Carson doesn't want to be here. He holds a primary. He's a primary contributor to why he doesn't want to be here. He doesn't have the weapons that a lot of the younger quarterbacks that have come through the league have really had. And they didn't do right by the guy. And obviously, I don't think that Carson handled it, correctly. But Howie has nobody really to blame but himself.
Inside the Birds, Adam Kaplan, they reported earlier this morning, and this isn't I don't think a crazy thing, but that high-ranking NFL personnel sources believe the Colts. Many people feel they're the best fit, but their report is that they're the best equipped to land Wentz, and that factoring in cap, contractual situation, and all of that. So do you feel that if you're the Colts and you're Frank Reich, is that a move that you pull the trigger on that puts them over the top?
Yeah, their defense all season long was up there with the top defenses in football. What they were really missing was a quarterback, a young quarterback that can kind of make plays outside the pocket, make plays outside of structure, elevate the plays of the guys around him. Philip Rivers, let's face it, as good of a career as he had, he wasn't going to take them to the Super Bowl. He didn't even he was never really a threat to take them to the Super Bowl. I think that having a young quarterback like Carson, pairing him with Frank Reich, who seems to be the one coach that knew how to press all the right buttons with this guy, get him on an MVP track. And obviously, Press Taylor is in the mix there too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So there's going to be some familiarity there, and that seems to be the best destination, not just financially, because they were able to do so, but because of the coaches that are surrounding him. There's going to be a comfort level there, and he's seen success with Frank Reich before, so it all makes sense.
And a really good offensive line there too. That it's one of the reasons why Luck wanted out of there. They had no line. And then they brought Ballard in, and Ballard started to fix the line, and now the line's one of the best in the league. And Luck, there's some murmurs. I don't know if you heard this at all, Andrew. There is some murmurs that Luck might be thinking about coming back, due in part that line is fixed.
Oh man, I was a big Andrew Luck fan. He's my favorite quarterback. It'd be awesome to see him come back, but I just have a hard time believing those rumors. I think he's so far away from football right now. I wouldn't rule out. Knowing how smart he is and how good of a teacher he was when he was playing, as far as him being a coach, I wouldn't rule that out. I just don't see 2 years removed that he would have any interest in coming back to the NFL, given just given his time that he's been away.
All right, this is Football at 4. He's Andrew DiCecco. It's Super Bowl Sunday coming up on 97.3 ESPN. So, Andrew, of course, you are big into the draft. You're big into the landscape of the NFL, not just the Eagles. So, as this offseason gets here, we will talk more NFL as the Eagles stuff slows down. It just hasn't slowed down at all. But I do want to get your breakdown and thoughts, because you're a really good X and O's guy to break this game down. How you see this is such a – I don't feel like this matchup's getting enough credit, because the Buccaneers aren't a sexy, I guess, team for whatever. But neither market is all that sexy. But you got a really good Buccaneers defense, a really fast-paced offense. You got Tom Brady on one side. I think it's going to be a really fun game. How do you break it down?
Well, to me, the X factor becomes Carlton Davis, the Buccaneers corner, versus Tyreek Hill. Earlier in the season, Tyreek Hill went up against Carlton Davis and absolutely embarrassed him. There's nothing Carlton Davis could do, and the game was over really before at the blink of an eye. So I think right now the Tampa Bay pass rush has to get home on Pat Mahomes, because I don't know if the secondary is going to be enough to be able to slow down Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, all those guys. I just don't know that they're going to be able to keep up in a track meet like that. So the pass rush really needs to be on for them. I don't think Kansas City's going to have a lot of success running the football. I really think Tampa's very stout against the run. And then, on the other side of the football, you look at Tom Brady. I've learned a long time ago never to rule Tom Brady out of anything. So there's a lot of people that already have the Chiefs winning this game, -3, of course. But I think it's going to be one of those where it's going to be tight all the way throughout the game. And Tom Brady's going to have some success with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and moving the football that way. I'm not really impressed with the Kansas City secondary. Outside of Tyrann Mathieu and Juan Thornhill, but their corners don't really, they're not really going to strike fear in anything. So I think that Brady's going to be able to find success throwing the football. Tampa Bay's running game, there's not really much there with Leonard Fournette and a banged up Ronald Jones. They're still going to go. They're still going to try, but they should find more success running the football than Kansas City will. But I ultimately have the Chiefs winning 31-27 right now.
A lot of high scores. Ryan Leaf had 35-31, I think it was. And there you heard Andrew there, another high-scoring game. Should be a lot of fun. Super Bowl Sunday, it's the final football game of the season. And then it's on to free agency and, of course, the NFL draft. And Andrew DiCecco will be with us throughout it all here on Football at 4. We don't go anywhere for Football at 4, and it's powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And as we told you earlier, per Adam Kaplan and Jeff Mosher from Inside the Birds, the Eagles – according to some high-ranking NFL sources, the Eagles will eventually wind up moving Wentz despite the massive cap hit that comes from the 4-year extension he signed back in 2019. For more on that story, check out InsideTheBirds.com. All right, Andrew, enjoy the Super Bowl, man. We'll catch up with you next week.
You too, guys. Have a great weekend.
All right, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.